All right, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first in-person meeting of the Yellow Springs Planning Commission in a long time. So welcome, and hope everybody's safe. My name is Frank. I'll be chairing the meeting tonight. Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Doden.
Here.
Stiles.
Present.
Curlis. Here. Green.
Here.
Amen.
Here.
Also present is Planning and Zoning Administrator Denise Swinger, and our Comptroller Solicitor Rhiann Parcels will be here momentarily.
Okay, thank you very much. First thing I'm going to do is just briefly run through what the agenda for tonight's meeting is going to be. We'll have a review of the minutes from the last meeting, which was June 15th. Then we'll briefly go over communications letters that Planning Commission has received regarding issues that are in front of the Planning Commission tonight. Then will we have a council report, Laura?
A short one.
Okay. And then we'll have time for citizen comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda. And I'll repeat that when we get there. Then we have 3 public hearings. The first one is a conditional use for what's the address? 213 North Winter Street. Then there's the second public hearing is conditional use for 108 Cliff Street. And then the third is conditional use for 314 Dayton Street. Then we'll go over old business, new business, agenda planning, and adjournment. So let's start by reviewing the minutes from the last meeting, and I'll just go through them page by page. If any members of Planning Commission have any changes or corrections, please let me know. So anything on page 1? Okay. Page 2. Page 3, page 4, page 5, or page 6. Okay. I was not at the last meeting, so I will refrain from voting on the approval for the minutes for this time.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I second it.
It's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Yes, Stiles.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I would just like to mention that I think that Judy did an incredible job, because when you have a public hearing on Zoom with all of these people popping in, and most of the time we all forgot to introduce ourselves, so she did an amazing job.
Thanks.
All right, next item is communications, and I think we have printed out copies of 3 letters, one from Tony Laracuda regarding potential traffic problems on Spillane Road as a result of the potential development at the end of town. Another letter from, I believe, Bob Swaney regarding the WYSO building, and generally seems to be in support of that conditional use. And another letter from Andy Holyoke regarding the first public hearing about the accessory dwelling unit. What's that? On Winter Street, and then another letter that we don't have printed out also is that from Beth and Andy Holyoke about generally supporting the lumberyard project, I believe. So, did everybody have the letters? Okay. All right, we'll go on to the council report.
Yes, it was a busy council meeting last time regarding Planning Commission matters of concern. We had a second reading on we call it the weeds ordinance, but really it's to promote managed landscaping and give people options for using their property to incorporate more native and natural plantings. That did get a second reading and a public hearing, and it passed council. There was also an emergency reading regarding two emergency readings establishing a building department for the village of Yellow Springs, and both of those passed. So we will be having our own building department here, which the hope is that it will make the process quicker, easier for people doing projects, residential and commercial. And Josue may want to say a few more things about that. We had a first reading on an ordinance accepting annexation from Miami Township to the Village of Yellow Springs regarding 33.816 acres of property located north and east of Hyde Road and west of Spillane Road. This would be the Ober annexation on the south side. If you have comments about that, the public hearing will be at the next council meeting, which will be July 19th. So come and that's where when the public hearing will happen. There was a first reading on an ordinance and related ordinances amending our code of ordinances regarding transient guest lodging. So I would encourage you to read that. That's ordinance 2021-21, 22, and 23. In general, the idea is to make transient guest lodging, well, first of all, we no longer allow non-owner operator occupied ones. So if you're an owner or operator and you're occupying your main dwelling, you can operate a transient guest lodging operation on the property. There's just some tweaks to the code that we wanted to make. And so it was busy. So yeah, most of the agenda, and it seems like the next time too. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Laura. Next thing is the citizen comments for items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if anybody would like to make any citizen comment, please come up to the microphone, please identify yourself, and try to keep your comments as brief as possible, please.
My name's Mitzi Miller. I am going to discuss the driveway standards, accessibility, easements, parking, and storage. I feel that that particular ordinance needs to be addressed, and clarification needs to be given to that, and look at some of the concerns I'm just going to address right now. Some of the things that I think need to be considered are lack of frontage for a parking pad, transient guests lodging, parking pads, parking cars and grass, which potentially can be an environmental hazard with oils and fluids, obstruction of fire and safety vehicles and hydrants, obstruction and access of utility and water lines for emergency pedestrian bicycle safety, obstruction of visual field of neighbors trying to back out, and with the global warming, drought conditions, dried grass could cause a hot engine to cause a fire. I've got a particular incident where this particular commission didn't pass an ordinance on allowing a parking pad or a additional parking spot in somebody's front yard. And now currently this individual is using his front yard as a parking pad and for a work vehicle. So I just think it warrants some consideration to look at this. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mitzi. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, please step up on the microphone, give your name.
Hi, I'm Gary Zaremski, and I have something I want to bring up for consideration. I think the Planning Commission would ultimately work on this if they agreed. I was just realizing in reading the packet for today's meeting, something in general that would be valuable having to do with bicycle parking. And I'm realizing already in the code with various commercial buildings and stuff like that, you have requirements for automotive parking. And it just struck me, why not add something to that code in terms of a requirement of some sort for bicycle parking? And maybe even have the code be slightly different for properties that are along the bike trail. And where this came to mind, and I won't bring it up again at the particular items, two of the items on the agenda today are both commercial buildings. There's bicycle parking planned, and it just struck me that they're just, there's no guidance in terms of how much bicycle parking or what type of bike racks would be best suited. And as we try to promote a bike-friendly community, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it just makes sense. And in particular, anything along the bike trail, it's sort of obvious you're going to have bicycles coming, and we just don't need another region with bikes parked on, locked up the trees all over the place. So that's what I'd like to suggest.
Okay.
And I'd be happy to talk to anybody in the future about it, because needless to say, believe it or not, I have specific ideas.
Thank you very much. Any other citizen comments for any items not on tonight's agenda? All right, thank you very much. We will go on to the start of the public hearings. The first one, the conditional use application about the auxiliary or accessory dwelling unit at 213 North Winter Street. We'll start with the staff report on that, please.
Sure. Do we need to have a motion to take it off the table?
Yes, we do, thank you.
We have to have a motion to take it off the table.
Oh, okay.
Motion on table.
Okay, we have to have a motion to take this off the table.
I so move.
Second.
Okay. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Curlis.
Yes.
Amend.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Stiles.
Yes.
Stover.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I'll start. Okay, so this is a continuation of the conditional use application for an accessory dwelling unit and a garage. There were neighbors that were concerned with the location of the balcony. The applicants do not wish to change that location, and as the solicitor pointed out at the last meeting, privacy is not a reason for denial. So the Planning Commission did request a survey, and staff accepted their mortgage survey, which was less than a year old. The applicant also had the property pins exposed, and we went out to the site and we measured from the neighbor's fence to the property line and found that the neighbor's fence actually was inset about 1 3/4 of a foot inside their property line. We also measured from the property line pin to the location of the structure, and that was 6 feet. So that is inside or outside the setback area requirement, which is 5 feet. The location meets all the other requirements. I'm not going to go into that because we did at the last meeting. But there will be a condition of a variance if this is approved for the driveway length, which was normally has to be 20 feet, and the request will be for a 10-foot variance. But that would still leave, there were modifications made to the site plan, leaves 29 feet 4 inches from the edge of the road to the structure. And the planning, I know there was a concern about the storm system, and Johnny Burns is here tonight. There is a 100-year-old plus magnolia tree on that property, and the village is undertaking a storm sewer system upgrade. And Johnny's is working on that to try to keep the tree. So, and he's here if you have any questions about that.
Any questions or concerns about the staff report from members of the Planning Commission?
I have two. Can we keep the tree, or it's the stormwater project?
Did you? Sorry. We've all gotten too used to Zoom, I think.
Currently, we are looking to try to move it to the north side of the road. We're still doing the engineering, but it does look like that we'll be able to move it across the road to where it won't affect the tree, and we'll be able to keep the swell and tie the swell into the storm on Walnut Street.
Stay there. I have another question.
Okay.
Actually, one of the things that bothered me when I went back and read is that the setback should be 20 feet and it's only 10. You know, that's like a big difference. And one of the reasons for that is in case we ever do a sidewalk. There's none there now, right?
That actually has a large road right-of-way there. And so the swell is exactly where the sidewalk would be. So the sidewalk would go on the other side on top
I
of
see.
the storm system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
So I had a question. You know, we said last time that the privacy wasn't a concern. And I'm just, one of the things that's in here is talking about, all the way at the end, 1262.04C, protect natural resources, health, safety, and welfare, and the social and economic well-being of those who, basically including the neighbors. So what about the economic impact, the value of the neighbor's house? Is there any way to consider that, having the less privacy in your backyard has an impact on the value of your yard?
If you can quantify that. And to clarify, privacy alone is not grounds for denial. It is one of those factors that Planning Commission consider when you're looking at the language of 1262. But that on its own is not a basis for the denial.
And if there was a way to quantify the the value, the difference in the value, that would be a basis, or?
There's been no evidence that there is any sort of economic impact.
So if they brought in a realtor or 2 or 3 realtors and have them give estimates based upon how the house is now versus if that unit was there?
I don't know that a realtor could ethically give you an opinion as to what privacy would be in terms of property value. That's subjective determination.
What about the evaluator? There's estimators that come out for banks and they're private firms.
For privacy,
No, for the difference in value of their home based upon having the building there with the onset and not.
well, Mr. Green's question was economic impact.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, as an attorney, I don't know that there are any standards that privacy is an economic impact. It's again, a subjective factor that Planning Commission can consider, but on its own is not a ground for denial.
But economic impact is not a subjective,
Economic
measure.
impact is a number.
yeah, is a number. And there's people who have professional licenses to do evaluations for these properties, for sale, for banks, like when you go and get a loan. Correct?
Sure, but I don't know that privacy alone would be something that would be quantifiable in terms
But
of a number.
If the neighbor wanted to follow up and hire someone to do those and present those, they could?
They may.
economic impact?
They may have some sort of, that would be something that, again, the Planning Commission can look at what are the factors under 1262 you have to consider. Economic impact is one of those, but there has been no evidence presented to the Planning Commission on the basis of economic impact. The neighbors' complaints are on the basis of privacy, and that has not been quantified.
I mean, it was brought up in the meeting that there's economic impact in the future when they try to sell the house during a meeting.
I might just intervene and say you must weigh the factors before you. You cannot bring in outside factors at this time. They don't exist, they're not in front of you, and the hearing has been scheduled.
So at the end of that meeting, were they advised that this was an option to them?
The applicant
Or the
has,
neighbor.
the applicant and anyone who contests the application has to bring the evidence that they have to the public hearing.
Okay, but they were not advised
They
specifically
can't,
about
they
the
can't,
economic-
for lack of a better word, spitball something.
Yeah, yeah. My concern is having it clear, I mean, there's no point in having anything in the code that can't be quantified.
That's not accurate. There are community factors that the Planning Commission is supposed to consider under the code as the code's written. And as far as what is quantifiable and what is subjective, you are supposed to make your determinations when you're issuing a conditional use permit, whether you're imposing conditions and saying that these permit applications meet certain criteria. You as a Planning Commission go through and say they meet or they don't meet these criteria as a body.
So what are the community factors that we're allowed to look at?
The things like the noise, odors, et cetera, traffic.
And what is social?
That's up to the Planning Commission. It's not defined.
It's, okay, so,
I have a question about the setbacks for staff. I think one of the issues with this balcony is that this building is oriented with the front to Cliff Street, so its back is to the neighbor. But yet you consider that a side yard setback rather than a backyard rear setback. That's like one of the problems to
Well,
me
we don't-
here, because it's
there-
only a 5-foot setback rather than a 10-foot
Yeah,
setback.
there's nothing in our code that tells you how you have to position your house. So if you wanted to position the back of your house and facing the front of your property, there isn't anything in the code that stops you from that.
I mean, as far as this building goes as an ADU, if we considered its rear end to have a 10-foot setback, what size would the building have to be?
But we base the setbacks, the determination, when you have two front yards, is the shorter of the two front yards, the opposite of that is the rear. So that rear is not the side yard where the fence is, it's the one facing the property that is on Walnut Street. And they have a 10-foot setback there, and they have a 6-foot setback from the property line for the side yard. So they are meeting the code requirements.
I had a question. When we ended the last time, there was some discussion of whether or not the applicants and their neighbors might consider mediation to resolve their issues. Do we know if anything occurred?
I said that I wouldn't want to consider that an option at this
Okay.
time, and I said that in the meeting,
Okay.
yeah.
And I have a question for the designer, Alex. So I asked in the last meeting if redesign of where the balcony is was possible, meaning orient it to the back rather than the side yard setback.
Yeah, I'll go with you there, and we've decided to nix the balcony in lieu of a little more interior space. There's still going to be windows on that side.
But there'll be no balcony.
There'll be no balcony
Okay.
on that side.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from members of the Planning Commission? Okay. All right, I will go ahead and open the public hearing on, I'm sorry.
Some more things.
Sure.
Just to cover all the bases, pending the BZA approval, we meet, thank you Denise, the 1262.03 and 08 general and specific conditions. We've withdrawn the deck. This is a lot like other recent approvals, say 402 North Winter Street, which had a similar BZA request that was accepted. And yeah, so we've done the survey. The survey was done at purchase, and we've done the pins. And I would like to add that you all have a mandate from the village to encourage accessory dwelling units. It is in black and white in the comprehensive plan. That is the voice of the village that says you should be helping homeowners, much less developers, solve our affordable housing needs problems through the use of infill development. So the sort of giving a heavy weight to not my backyard voices is working counter to the very critical affordability and just availability issue of housing in the village. You know, besides TGLs, if there were a lot more ADUs, then the number of TGLs that there were would be less important. So I think it's very important to just encourage this kind of development for homeowners or anybody. So I've come up with a neat little phrase. If you love this village, you've got to let it grow.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. And so if there's anybody who would like to speak about this issue, please come up, identify yourself with the microphone, and please try to keep your comments brief, if you please. Okay.
I'm Jonathan Ricketts. I'm the owner of 211 North Winter Street. I just want to clarify the coulees, you guys said you were going to take the deck off. We appreciate that. We just moved into town and we just really are looking to start a family here, and that was just really on our mind, and is the reason we don't usually do this kind of stuff, but felt like we had to speak out. I'm nervous.
You're doing fine.
Yeah, and I appreciate Alex's commitment to try to continue development, but it kind of felt like a slight when he said, "Not my backyard." We've been renters our whole lives. I'm 30 years old. I just was now able to buy a house because of college debt, and we even rented in the village, so we appreciate. We understand the need for ADUs and apartments, but I just wanted to clear that up. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan.
Yeah, good.
Good evening, everyone.
Could you state your name, please?
Yes, my name is Kelsey Cooley, and I'm an interested party since I live at 211 Gardendale Drive in Yellow Springs. And on a personal note, the landowners at 213 North Winter, Tracy and Johnny, are my parents, and the occupant of the ADU will be my brother Adam. From my personal perspective, the conditional use application for a garage with ADU meets the standards set forth in Chapter 126203 in the following ways. The proposed use will be consistent with the intent and purposes of this zoning code. The ADU will be used as a residence. Additionally, the proposed use is consistent with the village's 2020 comprehensive plan. As stated on the Village of Yellow Springs website, one of the purposes of the land use plan is to serve as the legal framework for zoning and subdivision decisions. Based on the 2018 Bowen Housing Needs Assessment that was conducted at the behest of the village asserted in its 2020 Comprehensive Land Use Plan that Yellow Springs should undertake the following strategy: actively support policies and initiatives to promote the development of small lots and to develop a how-to guide for residents in developing ADUs. This ADU meets the vision and recommendations of the comprehensive plan. Based on the subject matter expertise of Axis Architecture, I believe that the proposed use will comply with the applicable requirements of the code. According to the zoning map, the property at 213 North Winter is zoned RB Medium Density Residential. In accordance with Village Ordinance Chapter 124802 Schedule of Uses, accessory dwelling units may be conditionally permitted in areas zoned RB Medium Density Residential. Additionally, the proposal submitted by Axis seeks to comply with all applicable requirements of this code. The proposed use will be compatible with the character of the general vicinity. The proposed use of the ADU will be solely for residential purposes. As previously stated, the property at 213 North Winter and its surrounding area is zoned RB Medium Density Residential. Per Village Ordinance 124801, the RB district accommodates similarly situated new and infill development at densities up to 8 units per acre. Per the proposal submitted by Axis, the use and structure of the ADU is compatible with the character of the general vicinity. Additionally, on May 11th, 2021, the Planning Commission's approval of the conditional use application for the ADU at 402 North Winter further demonstrates that the proposed use will be compatible with the character of the general vicinity. Based on the subject matter expertise of Axis Architecture, I believe that the area and the proposed use will be served by essential public facilities and services, and the applicant will install the public utilities, streets, or other public infrastructure as required by the village, state, or other agencies to applicable specifications. The proposed use will not be detrimental to any person, property, or the general welfare by reason of excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, odor, or characteristics not comparable to the uses permitted in the zoning district. The proposed use will be solely for residential purposes. Using the ADU as a residence is comparable to the uses permitted in the zoning district. The proposed use does not impede the normal and orderly development of the surrounding property. Based on the subject matter expertise of Axis Architecture, I believe that the proposed use will not block sight lines from the right-of-way to existing signs or windows on the front or side of a building. Furthermore, based on the subject matter expertise of Axis Architecture, I believe that the proposal from Axis meets the standards set forth in Chapter 126208E. As previously stated by Axis, although the deck on the ADU is permissible under the village ordinances as currently written, my parents have chosen to remove the deck from the ADU in order to foster positive relationships with neighbors. The preponderance of the whole record weighs in favor of granting the conditional use permit. Accordingly, I respectfully request that the conditional use permit for the ADU be approved with no conditions of approval imposed. I also request that if you vote against this proposal, that you individually state for the record why you are doing so with specific reference to the code. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else? Anybody in the hallway? Oh, okay. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to Planning Commission for discussion and ultimately a vote.
I have one question on the staff recommendation, 1262.08E1 for an ADU. I'm just trying to, what was that specific recommendation?
Yeah, it's just that they're going to have to go for a variance.
Oh, the variance.
You do have a condition, and the condition is going to be they have to go for the variance.
For the driveway.
For the driveway setback, yeah. And
Okay.
that's the only condition.
I make a motion, we approve.
Sarah, did you have
sorry.
Oh, I'm just glad a compromise related to the social and economic well-being of the adjacent neighbor was addressed between the parties and that some compromise was found.
All right, thank you.
I make a motion to approve the application with the condition that they seek and get a variance from the Board of Zoning Appeals, 1262.08E1.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Would you read back the motion, please, and then call the roll?
Okay, the motion is to approve the application with the condition that the conditions outlined in section 1262.04 and 1262.08E1 are considered by the BZA.
Okay.
And it was then seconded.
I should make clear, as presented tonight, as the plan was presented to us tonight, without the balcony.
So the application
Yeah,
is
yeah.
presented.
Yeah, thank you.
Act as in Stan's balcony.
All right, any further discussion of the motion? All right, with the clerk call the roll, please.
Green.
Yes.
Amend.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Stiles.
Yes.
Doty.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for your participation. All right, we will move on to the second conditional use application. It's Patrick Lake of Massey Creek Ventures submitted a conditional use and site plan review for a market and eatery at 108 Cliff Street.
Mr. Chairman, I'll recuse myself, please. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for Patrick. I'm right now in the hallway. So
Not yet.
we're going to go,
Just don't get in a hurry.
I'll do a brief somewhat brief.
Well, the staff report first, and then.
So the 108 Cliff Street property, as everyone fondly knows, is the former Herb Lumber Company. It's about 3/4 of an acre site and has 157 feet of frontage on Cliff and 175, and then 157 feet of frontage on the Little Miami Scenic Trail. Patrick Lake and Brian Drew of Massey Creek Ventures is here tonight. They're in the process of purchasing the property. We did get agent authorization from the current property owner for them to pursue this conditional use application tonight. This is for the development of the lumber company market and eatery. The project will involve the repurposing of the existing building into tenant lease spaces for food, drinks, and market retail sales. Everything is either grandfathered in. There's not going to be any extension to the existing building. There is a storage, accessory storage area that was used for, previously had been used for the storage of lumber, and more recent years it was for storage of vehicles and boats and all kinds of things. And then there's an accessory structure facing Cliff Street. Those two structures will be removed, and there is a plan to have a entrance off of Cliff Street that will lead into Millworks property. And the applicants tonight have talked with the owner of Millworks, and they're in the process of formalizing an agreement for that. The rear of the property is grandfathered in on the setbacks. They have in the plan, which they're going to show you, there's the steps and bike path seating and bicycle parking is going to actually be in the village's right-of-way, but that was at the request of Public Works Director Johnny Burns, who's here tonight, to just dress up that Little Miami Scenic Trail area. And what was nice about this is that the steps are going to be necessary to allow access into the Market Eatery, because the applicants are going to allow there to be open to the public restrooms, which is a big thing in Yellow Springs. Just saying. They will need to get, if this is approved, they'll need to get a BZA zero lot line variance on that side. As far as parking, 65 parking spaces is typically the requirement for the types of uses that they're going to have. They'll have 15 parking spaces there. I think they have 3 or 4 ADA compliant spaces. And there are within, the code says if there are other parking facilities within 300 feet of the property, then those can be factored in. And of course, we have the John Bryant's parking lot, we have the Dayton and Railroad Street public parking facility, and then they'll also have access to, in this parking agreement with the owner of Millworks, they're going to have access to utilize that as well. And staff is recommending approval of this, including the outdoor patio seating area, and there are some conditions of approval that really will come after this, because they still have to get the final easement agreement with the with Millworks and things like a stormwater mitigation plan. However, most of this property was almost completely covered in impervious surface area, and they are going to be replacing a lot of the by taking down those structures. They're planning on putting pervious paver types of driveway in, which will help to further mitigate the water. Johnny Burns, who's here tonight, also has talked with Millworks, because there's a stormwater issue over there, and they're planning as well on working with Millworks to alleviate that. I did talk with the fire chief, and he requested a designated fire lane, and he is okay with that actually being on Cliff Street. There'll just be some striping there. The only concerns that I've heard so far from neighbors is parking in front of their properties. And that would be something I'm not 100% sure how to address. Again, that falls back on Public Works. Throw that on Johnny if there's any type of signage that can be done. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Patrick Lake is here to actually do a little PowerPoint presentation of the renderings.
Okay.
Thank you all very much, Denise. Thank you for that excellent summary. For those that don't know me, my name is Patrick Lake. My business partner, Brian Drew, is here with me tonight as well. Both Brian and I grew up on farmland just outside of Yellow Springs, separate farms on opposite ends of town. And I attended Yellow Springs schools, and Brian married a fourth-generation Yellow Springer. In the last few years, both of us have relocated to the village or close to the village to raise our young families in this community. We're here today to talk about our conditional use application for 108 Cliff Street. So Judy, can we, for those who are not familiar with the spot, this is a view from this morning of the lumber yard. And as Denise summarized, this used to be the lumber yard, and for the better part of the last 2 decades has been a storage facility as well as home to the posterior chain gym. Our vision for this space is to breathe new life into this historic building and create a vibrant public space that has new quick service restaurants and retail that will provide needed services for the village and complement the neighborhood. We're calling this project the Yellow Springs Lumber Company Market and Eatery. This project is put together by Brian and I. We started a new business last year, Massey's Creek Ventures, and have been working on this for 16 months. Next slide. The aspects of this project that we're so excited about is the restoration and revitalization of this historic building. We project that this project will create 20 to 30 jobs on site. We'll be capturing revenue that is coming to the village already and leaving the village before interacting with merchants. There is a $2 to $3 million market gap that was defined in the retail gap study that the village commissioned in 2017. The services that we're providing, the businesses that will be coming into the Market Eatery will be providing services and goods that are not duplicative of restaurants and businesses in town. This is really going to fit complementary services to the community. We can go to the next slide. So, reasons, in our opinion, for approval of this application. Each of the businesses that are proposed operating in this project are conditionally permitted in the I-1 code. Beyond that, we can skip to the next slide. Looking at the 2020 Comprehensive Land Use Plan, this is an outcome-oriented project, fits exactly with the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. Conversion of this space in this area to what will be an extension of the downtown Yellow Springs. There is some great benefits to this space opening up. This will serve as a new way to access the Millworks businesses, both on bike and by foot, and as well being able to park and drive into the space.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sure. So in your view there of the, it shows it basically the front being level with the bike path. Is it, I thought that the lumber yard actually was up a little
It
higher.
is up, and there are stairs, so that it's there's a two-level, there's that,
Okay.
there's an outside patio that's at the level of the lumber yard, and then steps down, which would be on the village right-of-way,
Okay.
down to the bike path.
But this is your intention to have the thing just basically open to the bike path?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and there will be sufficient bike parking that we're going to create both on our site, and Allison's going to create at the Millworks site.
Okay. Okay.
What kind of vendors are you planning on putting in there if they're not duplicated services?
So quality quick service restaurants, the fast quality food that, some of these businesses have already established customer bases in Yellow Springs. The Yellow Springs Brewery has been hosting food trucks, and business has been coming into the town and building a good customer base and would like to locate in Yellow Springs. So there are some businesses that have been coming by food truck that want to establish here.
Also retail businesses?
Yeah, so the type of retail is going to be sale of local goods or in support of local activities.
How many spaces are there going to?
About 10
Okay.
users will be in the eatery. And we've also invited the farmers market to locate on our location. And they're talking to each of the vendors to see if that's of interest. Okay, so this is going to become a public space. We are incorporating public restrooms. We are having, we're putting in a mezzanine level, which will be common area seating, a lift to the mezzanine for mobility limited visitors to access. And we're going to have high-speed Wi-Fi available so people can come, folks that work from home can come and sit down, have a cup of coffee, and work, and then grab lunch.
How much change do you need to do to the building?
So we need to gut the interior, and we need to do some work on the siding, replace the exterior face a little bit, right? So, but we're not doing any change to the size of the building or adding anything onto the building aside from the patio.
Okay.
Okay, so we can jump to the next slide. And Denise covered this. We have engaged with neighbors around all sides of the property, residential neighbors, and talked to them about concerns that they have for this project, things that they'd like us to incorporate, which we did. There was some concerns for noise and traffic. We engaged with the village to talk about ways in which we can address concerns for cars parking in front of residential drives. Which we believe is going to be a community effort, and we're happy to lead that process. We've also engaged with the Millworks owners and are working out a reciprocal easement agreement. And we both see that there's a lot of value that we can create for one another, and we're excited to work together. We've been working with the village on creation of the bike parking and access from the bike path by the ADA accessible ramp. We can jump to the next slide. So I think Denise covered this adequately, but just drive the point home, there's more than enough parking to accommodate visitors to the lumber company. We can jump to the next slide. So we're really excited about Yellow Springs, and I stole my own thunder a little bit here, but there is a gap for services in this community. Folks come to Yellow Springs, they walk around, they might try to grab a table at the Winds, they might just be window shopping, and then they'll jump in their car and leave town and go to Taco Bell, McDonald's, Walmart, KFC. Those are the top brands that are interacted with for visitors that are leaving Yellow Springs. Something that they can just grab something quick and cheap and be on their way. We have an opportunity to capture those dollars right here in Yellow Springs. Judy, can we jump to the next slide? Yeah, I think we can just summarize, or we can actually open up to questions here. I thank you all for your time and attention, and if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. Any members of the Planning Commission have any additional questions?
Well, I have a question. My biggest concern is parking.
Sure.
Because I know there are the public parking areas, but if you look on the weekends, those are full. And it's like all of the businesses in town are depending upon those. So I am concerned about that you're only going to have 15 spaces. Is there any way to have any additional ones? Or have you, and I don't know if this is part of your agreement with Mills Work, is using some of their parking, because that's
Yeah, so that
concern.
reciprocal easement agreement is really opening up access to both properties. People might use our access road and park on our property and then walk over and have a beer at the brewery, and we're totally happy with that.
And do you have a sense
Conversely,
of-
somebody might go to Millworks and park there and come and get us something to eat for lunch. And
Do you
walk
have a
over.
sense of how their parking is being used at this point? Because I've not seen it. Is it full on the weekends, or?
I think it really depends on the weekend. Yeah. And Nate and Lisa are here. I think they can comment on that.
That's true.
Yeah.
So are these not, because originally when I looked at this, I thought that you might be connected with the brewery so people would be able to share the liquor license and buy beer and then walk over. Is that the case, or are they totally separate?
So they're separate properties.
Okay.
We are open to folks getting a beer at the brewery and walking over to our site, but I think there's work that needs to be done before we can really cement that.
Yeah. Okay. And then with the parking, I know months and months and months ago, we spoke about, with more businesses using that public parking, did anything ever happen with annual fees to start funding more public parking for anyone utilizing that public parking?
Yeah, absolutely.
As you know, we, the administration, have tried dealing with the parking situation for some time. Council took a very clear action, removing the parking concept plans from the comprehensive land use plan. So that has handicapped our ability to pursue additional parking opportunities. I don't know if that answers your question. It also, initially we were thinking about a pay-for-parking approach, and we wanted to do a feasibility study. But with the parking concepts being removed, we don't have an incentive to pursue that research and building out additional parking assets. We've done a tremendous job as it is to build out additional parking at the railroad lot and here at the John Bryan Center. Did that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah, there's no reason to raise money if there's nowhere to do it and no initiative to go forward. So.
Right.
One of the things, too, is I do intend to ask in the budget for 2022 a parking inventory and to find out how many on-street parking spaces there are and what types of signage we can do to allow people to park in places that they wouldn't think of that are not, they may be residential, but there really isn't any residential in some of those areas, and they could act, there maybe only are a 5-minute walk to the downtown. So that is something that we are going to ask.
And the issue of Andy and Beth about the parking in front of their house, that is actually on-street parking. Is that considered public parking? So that actually you can't save it for the house. Anybody could actually park there if they wanted.
That's true. It's a public right of way. But as far as signage, I don't know, Johnny, if that's something you can even do.
I don't think we can, because it's public parking.
Right, and Planning Commission saw this issue a couple months back when there was a request to designate public parking for a particular residence. It's public right-of-way. We couldn't restrict it for a private use. One more thing I'll add to the parking situation. I have met with the downtown businesses, and there's a lot of interest from the downtown businesses for additional parking assets. So while council took the action to remove the parking concepts, I'm committed to working with the downtown businesses to explore additional opportunities, and we'll probably come up with some strategy to help improve capacity or figure something out. And Jamie Sharp is leading that convening that group. So I think there's hope in the horizon, at least from our end.
And I definitely think it's important that, that assets that are needed to, repair parking, public parking that are used by tourists coming in come from the businesses and don't go on the residents who don't really utilize that parking. So it's good.
Sarah, I'm with you. I've advocated for it, and fortunately, we are where we are.
Okay, thank you. That's right. Any other questions, comments, concerns from members of Planning Commission? Okay.
Are there any trees being torn down, and if so, are they being replaced?
Not on our property. There is some trees, small trees that would come down in between the millworks and lumber yard stuff.
Are you showing them on landscaping plans?
It's not our property. It's Allison's taking those
Allison's.
down. Yeah.
Okay.
If I remember right, they're like arborvitae, sort of shrubbery, sort of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this. So if there's any members of the public who would like to comment on this conditional use application, please come up to the microphone and identify yourself. And again, try to limit your comments to 2 minutes or less, please.
Hi, I'm Joel Smith.
Hi.
I live at 123 Cliff Street, which is across the street and a little bit to the west. In general, we're in favor of it, but 3 issues, parking being one. We get parked up about a dozen times a year on the weekends where it's just packed on our street. So that is a concern that this will increase that. Another concern is increased traffic. A lot of people walk, bike. If you're living north of town, you're coming down Cliff Street if you're wanting to access the bike path. That's the main access route. So having more traffic is a concern to us, and the speed of traffic. Even right now, with the limited amount of traffic that comes down Cliff Street, we have a problem with people going too fast. Not everybody, but some. So we're wondering if it's possible the village maybe would consider something like a speed bump, something like that, even though I hate them, but I don't know how else you would slow it down. And the third is the time that these businesses are open. When we've talked about this, we were told that 10 o'clock during the week, some Sunday through Thursday, businesses would close at 10 or earlier, and on the weekend it would be by midnight, which we're fine with. But we just want to make sure, because we don't, we have to get to sleep during the week, and you don't want people who are, being rowdy and stuff like that.
When you
so.
say parked in, have you been blocked in, or are you just the spots in front of your house are filled up?
We've had, during street fair, we had somebody tell us that we could not park in our own driveway because I had told somebody you can't park there because my wife, has to park there. That's rare, but usually it's the parking in front of our house, and across the street makes it really hard to back out. It's hard to see, it becomes essentially a one-lane road at times when you're really crowded.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Joel. Anybody else want to talk? Yeah, please.
Hi, I'm Marion Miller. I live on Railroad Street. And I agree with Joel's comments, and Beth and Andy's letter also was right on spot. I want to underline the parking issue. I would really love to have signage right now that says residential parking only. I maintain the spot in front of my house, and sometimes I park there myself, but my guests park there, people coming to take care of my house park there, and I've had trucks with large trailers parked there until I went out and said, "What are you doing here?" Well, I'm going to meet some bike riders. I told them this would be a good place to meet. I mean, some crazy things like that. And I think we need that now. We don't need to wait until this building appears. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Dino Plata with Dino's Cappuccinos. I'm in support of this. I signed a letter of intent with Patrick and with Brian. We were looking to locate a small kiosk over there, so this is a good opportunity for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Dino.
My name is Kyle Truitt. I'm the owner of the Posterior Chain, the gym located inside of the building. So I just want to come out and say I'm in support of this action. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lindy Keaton. I live at 123 Cliff Street, so kind of catty corner from the property. So I just want to add same concerns that my partner Joel spoke of. But if you do put a speed bump, can you put the threading kind? And I just want someone who really knows traffic to take a look at it, because when I look at it, it looks like what's going to happen, and I'm super excited about it, but it looks like our street's going to become a connector in a parking lot. If you look at where the lots are, and right now the fast traffic, and I won't name names, are people going to their jobs downtown, and it's a fast cut through. So speed bump, does it have to go all the way through? Could it be one way? I'm not a traffic expert, but I think someone needs to take a hard look at it, because there's no sidewalks, there's no really room for sidewalks, because there are buildings on both sides, really in the right of way. I mean, just they've been there, I don't know. Anyway, it just seems like for safety concerns, we really need to take a hard look. And I was a little I'm all for it, but I was taken aback when I heard that 65 parking spots would be, or 4, whatever it was, and there's only 15. So that made me even like, it's going to be a lot of people driving through there looking for parking. So if we can think hard about how to keep it safe for all the foot traffic and bike traffic. Thanks.
I have a question. It's your resident. If they were to make it one way right after where their parking goes in, going away from the downtown area, would that be preferable than having it two-way and having people going both directions and parking on either side?
I actually probably would need time to sit down and like play with that. I don't know. Like, sorry.
Okay, but would be.
I mean, for me, it doesn't matter. We could go either way. I go both ways sometimes to get to our property, but other people on the other house owners there might think differently.
Okay, because I mean that's changing to a one-way does create some annoyance.
Right.
So
and
how
for
much
us,
is it worth?
we're going to get that traffic, like we're, what is it, west of their entrance. So we're going to get their traffic if they're coming down Cliff Street, basically. There's no way to avoid that without blocking their, yeah. All right, thanks.
Yep. Anybody else? Oh, yep, please.
Hello, I'm Lisa Walters with Yellow Springs Brewery, and I just wanted to express support of this project. I think it can bring some pretty awesome things to our town.
Okay. Anybody else? Anybody in the hallway? Oh, yeah, please.
Hi, Gary Zaremski again. I just thought of, as I'm listening to a lot of the discussion, a lot of people talking about the, traffic and transportation along Cliff Street and all. And, from my experience, there's already a lot of motion on that, a lot of pedestrians, a lot of bicyclers, already quite a number of cars, and it'll only be more. And I'm realizing there isn't even a sidewalk on Cliff Street, and no sidewalk, no bike lanes, nothing like that. And it might be valuable. It's a short stretch of street there. It might be really valuable to really look at the configuration there in terms of being able to do something with it to address these various concerns and maybe make it safer. Because actually you go down Cliff Street, it's steep, and you have to either jam on the brakes or, well, if on a bike, that's my perspective, jam on the brakes, or you make a very sharp right turn and there's gravel there, and it's could use a little bit of work. So something more for these guys.
Thank you, Gary. There isn't an easy solution to the traffic pattern and parking situation in that corridor. One of the things that we've been talking about internally, we've been thinking about what's the future of the railroad lot. As you know, we've got money to reroute the storm system underneath that lot to make that lot developable, and we're thinking about what will be a future concept look like. So we're thinking of a building, putting in infrastructure for what will be a building facing Dayton Street. So while we're thinking about that, we've reviewed previous plans, design concepts that have been considered for that space, and among them is to do Railroad Street is not a street, a full street, and it wasn't intended to be a full street as it is being used now. So doesn't solve the traffic issue now, but Gary's right, the space, the configuration is not conducive to the traffic pattern that currently exists. So one of the iterations that I have seen is using Railroad Street as a walking street and changing the whole traffic pattern so that we prevent, I think Linda, you mentioned folks coming to the downtown, so they'll go through Cliff Street, turn right, and get to downtown. So I suspect that the majority of the traffic is following in that route. So not an easy fix, but a potential fix could be reconsidering traffic through that space altogether, maybe making Railroad Street a walking street and changing the traffic pattern on Cliff Street. So it could be one way into Cliff and then out or turnabout of some way. So not an easy fix. I don't think that it's something that we could address or fix tonight, but I'm happy to continue looking at that as we think about the storm reroute for Dayton Street and what a potential development could look like on Railroad Street and parking or traffic. I think we could spend the whole night talking about traffic and parking.
And parking.
I know that the public right-of-way can't be used for private parking, but there's a grassy area behind the building that's currently paved. Is there any way to keep that and allow that just as private parking for those residents rather than turning it into a grassy area?
Are you talking about behind the building abutting Millworks?
So it's Cliff Street, grassy area, and then this building. This is a patio?
Yeah. So, yeah, on Cliff Street, there'll be ADA accessible parking, and then the grassy, this is going to be the entrance to the building, like the main entrance.
The main entrance is there?
So we'll have some landscaping and grass leading up to pavers and to the entrance.
And I don't know how, that grassy area, is that on your property, on that rendering?
What portion is?
A portion of it is, because what isn't on there is, according to the fire chief, has to be a fire lane. So, but those are things we can come up later.
That'd be striped on the road in front of that grass area.
Yeah.
All right, are there any other, excuse me, any other members of the public who'd like to comment on this application? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring the conversation back to the members of the Planning Commission. Any ongoing questions or concerns?
Well, I just want to follow up with the parking. Is there any way on your property that you can have more parking than what you currently show?
Well, it's a little bit of a balancing act, right? We could utilize space on Cliff Street to add more parking, but that, I think, starts to raise real concerns with the residential neighbors right across Cliff. We could probably create more spaces in our access lane, but we need to create enough space for the fire trucks to come through. So as it stands today, we're a little bit limited on what we can do for parking. We could sacrifice outdoor seating and create additional parking spaces, but it wouldn't be, I think it would be a diminishing return, where we might have the ability to park 2 to 4 more cars and lose the ability to have a really nice place to sit outside and enjoy a cup of coffee or something to eat.
Thank you.
What about dedicated spaces in the regular parking lot for those neighbors? Like 3 spaces, just in case people do park in front of their houses and they're not able to park on a certain occasion?
So I guess that we would take 3 spaces
2 or 3 spaces, so the neighbors.
and create those for the residents?
For the people whose parking is going to be taken away from them.
Well, I mean, we're not going to enforce if a resident parks, if a villager or somebody that lives in the house or a visitor to a house across the street comes and parks in our parking lot, we're not going to stop them from doing so, but I don't think we can dedicate, like, these are residential use spaces for the people across the street. I don't quite understand.
Well, that would be it, just for the people across the street. So if they do have an inconvenience, they do know that there's a space that they can go that they're allowed to use, that it's not open to the general public.
That's something we'd have to look at. I don't know that makes.
Trying to find a compromise.
Can I just ask Denise to clarify whether this plan as submitted meets the parking requirements?
It meets the parking requirements because of the location of the public parking areas within 300 feet, yes.
So, and is
by a factor of almost 4.
Is this parking survey going to look at how we utilize the parking lots are at different times? That's the intention, is to sort of
It's
map
going
it
to
all
be pretty
out?
Yeah, that's why we want to hire a consultant, an engineering firm to actually do traffic study counts and an inventory of what we have already on street, and how we can promote signage. And eventually, the village will have a parking map that people can go to, and they don't know that these places exist. Just, I think of one in particular, East North College Street. There isn't any buildings on that street. It has a very wide right-of-way, and there could be, it could be angled parking, and people really have like a 5-minute walk to downtown. But they're not aware that it exists. And so that would be, I think, really helpful to the downtown if people knew that there's these other places they could go.
But, Sarah, to address your question in terms of a compromise, I think seeking a compromise through our specific property and development is not the appropriate solution. The compromise needs to be sought through the community to address parking on residential drives and in front of residential drives in high-volume days. And that's something that we've expressed to all of the neighbors, that we're fully supportive of participating in addressing that. But that really does have to come in concert with village leadership, Public Works, and the community.
I mean, I would have to disagree because you're increasing the use of that and the need for parking of that area, hopefully exponentially. You know, that's the goal. But because of how the code's written.
I think this is a really difficult thing because I envision a lot of the people that are going there, this isn't the only place they're going. I mean, they're coming off the bike path from a trip that they're making through town, or they're parking somewhere else because they're shopping in other locations. And I think this is the problem we have when we think, that's why I didn't even want to have parking minimums, because I think coming up with these opportunities to exercise a little bit of vision and how you could have a relationship with other private property owners. I asked Patrick to explore that, even though we don't require it, and he did. So I feel that, you know, that he's made his best effort, and those 65 spaces are not just going to be for the eatery. They're going to be for, they may park there, but they're going to go other places, and vice versa.
If I, well, I've already closed the public hearing, so, sorry. It's okay.
Can I ask a question?
Well, I've closed the public hearing, actually, so, sorry. Okay, any other questions or concerns from members of the Planning Commission? No. Okay.
No.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay.
So I do want to ask, with the staff recommendations, then you have
the variance,
following conditions: the variance, the copy of the final reciprocal easement agreement, the stormwater mitigation plan, the final building plans, designated fire lane, and coordinate with the Village of Yellow Springs. Are these all things that you would want as conditions in our motion?
Sure, and you could just reference that without having to read each one.
Okay.
Because we have them on file.
Well, if we're ready, I'm going to make a motion to approve this with all of the conditions, the variance, the copy of the reciprocal agreement, the stormwater mitigation plan, final building plans, designated fire land, and coordinating with the Village of Yellow Springs.
Okay, I'll second that. Okay. Any discussion on the motion?
Can I just ask a question? I'm pleading ignorance here, but were the hours of operation listed?
They are.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just wanted to make sure that was covered. Yeah.
Okay, would the clerk call the roll, please?
Amend.
Yes.
Stiles.
Yes.
Green.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for everybody who participated in the public hearing on that. Okay, we're going to move on to...
Let me find my paper. There it is.
We'll let people mill out.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
I discussed that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we used to live on Cliff Street.
All right, we're going to move on to the third conditional use hearing. It's Max Chrome of Chrome Architecture will be speaking on behalf of Iron Table Holdings. Submitted a conditional use and site plan review for the WYSO radio station and professional offices for Iron Table Holdings at 314 Dayton Street. We'll start with Denise with the staff report, please.
Yeah, so radio stations and retail are not actually listed in RC, so staff needed to utilize the other category. but felt very strongly that to exclude the use as a radio station when it's primarily going to be professional activities within the building would be detrimental to WISO's future here in Yellow Springs. So that's why we're exercising the other category. The accessory use of retail is specific to selling merchandise, promotional merchandise for WYSO, as well as the Iron Table Holdings business enterprises. So they're really an accessory type of retail. They wouldn't be something that would be in direct competition with the downtown, and that's just my opinion. But anyway, I don't see any issues with that. And we do have the uses lot not listed as being that the presumption of prohibition of uses has historically been used for exclusionary purposes. We now have that option of coming before you and asking to consider it based under this other section. There is a property at the other end of Dayton Street, which is called a sound space. It's been a sound recording studio. It abuts residential areas. It's actually considered I-1, but there's never been any issues. As I said, everything's primarily indoors. 314 Dayton Street used to be 4 lots, and it was combined by a replat in 2020. It's 1.38 acres, and it has, it's what we call a through lot.
022 square miles.
Whose was that?
It's not mine.
Okay. I had my phone on silent, so I have no idea. Oh, that was funny. Okay.
Siri, would you call the roll, please?
Always listening. Right, it's for sure. It's a through lot, so it basically has frontage on both Dayton Street and Union Street. The property owners, Iron Table Holdings, also purchased a lot that's on Union Street that abuts it, and they intend to use that for parking because parking cannot be used on a conforming lot. They will need to replat that. They'll have to come back to Planning Commission for a rezoning and a replat to incorporate that into the larger RC lot, which has the current building on it. The existing building height at the roof peak is 45 feet, and the bell tower is 63 feet, which is not grandfathered in. So with the new design, there's a proposed roof skylight, which is 47 feet. It does have a stair tower as well that measures 41 feet and drops to a height of 22 feet along the western side yard lot, which I appreciated that because that is the side yard lot that can be as close as 5 feet. So they dropped that down to a 22-foot height. Those all additional things will need a variance. The radio station's going to have a transmission tower. I've kind of gone back and forth on the zoning code on this, but the zoning code in 1260-02D specifically calls out radio towers, and it says in that the maximum height is 100 feet for church steeples and general towers, and you have your radio operator towers. So they would need to go for a variance to that. The radio tower that they have over on the Antioch campus is 150 feet. And I was told with the topography, this could have to be a little bit higher. But one of the things in talking with Max Chrome is that at least for the portion, for the height of the building, he can tie that to the building, and we can be more concerned about the height that's exposed above that. There is a deed restriction that was placed on this property back in the 1996 prior to the sale. because the Village of Yellow Springs had used that as their administrative offices, when they went to sell it, they did put that deed restriction on it. And the deed restriction basically states that you can't attach anything to the front facade of the building or the rear. And I've been in this position for about 6 years, and I've probably talked to 30 to 40 different potential buyers of this property with a myriad of ideas for it. And so I've not only talked to our previous solicitor, but also our current solicitor, who agreed that this design will not interfere with the deed restriction because there won't be anything attached to the front or the rear of the original building. Let me point that out. And then also, the deed restriction doesn't allow any structures from the current original building to the Dayton Street side, and that's only on that side. We did allow for a ground freestanding sign for that property, so at least the businesses in there could advertise the previous owner, and we would also allow that as well for this, because they have to be able to at least have signage. And I think that pretty much covers it. There's a lot I have in the conditions, but it's simply stuff that, if you're approving this concept, it's things that they would bring back before they would go for the zoning permit. And we highly recommend approval on this one. Also, I want to point out then, I didn't get into the specifics of the design because that's something that Max is going to talk about, and I'm going to defer to him. But I want to say before that, in talking with Max, he designed the addition on this property so that it wouldn't interfere with the architectural character of the original building. And he indicated his strategy was to preserve its integrity by clearly differentiating between the old and new. And so I'm going to defer to Max to now show you that.
Hi, Max Chrome. I was raised in Yellow Springs. Went to Antioch School, Mills Lawn, Morgan Mills School, high school. I've been in California for the last 30 years pursuing architecture, and it is just really a great honor to return to Yellow Springs to do this project, which is very, very close to my heart. Before I get into my presentation, I'd like to introduce Luke Dennis, who's here, and he has a couple words, I think, to say.
Yeah, thanks, Max. I'm Luke Dennis. I'm the station manager. I just wanted, the headline is that if this is approved, Dave's generosity would guarantee that WISO can remain in the village. Since we became independent from Antioch, we have the option to go where we like, and our lease on the Kettering building that we currently occupy expires in March of 2023. So we've been doing a lot of research and thinking about where we want to go. And because we just bought our license from Antioch, we're not in a position to do a major capital campaign. We started pricing out a new facility for WISO in Yellow Springs. It could be up in the $7 to $8 million range. And Dave heard that and reached out to us and said, would you like me to renovate this beautiful historic building and renovate it to your specs so that you can move in and start leasing it from me at an affordable rate for the station for a long-term lease that would keep the station in the village. So our board thought about it and said, yes, we would love to do that. And as you'll see, the design is stunning and allows WISO to keep growing. And we're tucked away right now on the Antioch campus. This will be a place that will welcome the community in to see how we make radio. There are gathering spaces within the building. We just think it's beautiful, and we're really excited about it. So on behalf of the board of Miami Valley Public Media, I'm just here to express our enthusiasm for this project, and thanks for letting me say a few words. And during the public comments section, I do have an emailed statement from Bob Swaney, because he just got out of the hospital and couldn't be here tonight. Oh, you do have it?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, good. So I won't read it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Luke. Okay, so, and thank you all for hearing me tonight. I appreciate your service on the board. I want to just start a little bit, for those of you who don't know about the history of this building. It used to be a real monument, an icon in town. You could see that's an old postcard. And so it was a kind of thing that I think had a higher prominence in the town. It has the potential to be a really iconic building, and it's fallen into disrepair in recent years, and I think this is a great opportunity to get into it. It was, as everybody knows, this was purchased by the village, and it was in use as the town hall and police department for a long time. It's been in private hands for the last couple decades. And what I'm hoping is that it will be the new home for WISO, and we're targeting 2023 for the move-in. So this project started for me with a text from Dave Chappelle asking me if this building could meet the specs of WISO. So I did a couple quick sketches, just like, hey, well, maybe we could do something like this. We have the existing building, add a modern addition onto the side. Dave liked that thought, and so we decided to pursue it further. So in pursuing it further, it's important to really look at the condition of this existing building. And so I want to just show you a few pictures. You can see from these photographs the disrepair that has fallen on this building. You can see the crumbling concrete. That's the kind of damage that ended in the building collapse in Florida. This building isn't in danger of collapsing, but if this condition goes on for much longer, it will be. And this building is, some might consider it to be a tear down, but I don't. I really love the idea of breathing new life into an old building. This thing really needs some major surgery to get it there. And the hope is, if we give it this surgery, it will be in service for another 150 years, as it has been a resource in this community for 150 years. So just some more pictures. You can see what's happening to the building. You can see the water damage happening both inside and out. You see the cracks where water is getting in. Water is the enemy of buildings. I want to show you this photograph because you could see where the old light well was that used to let light into the basement, which has since been infilled. There's a great opportunity to open those back up and bring light into the lower level. I'm showing you this photograph because I want to point out the incredible natural light that's in this building. If you've ever been in this building, one of the things that will strike you is how amazing the natural light is in there. And it's because of these enormous, beautiful windows. They're giant. They're about 9 feet tall. So the question is, can we fit WISO in here? WISO has some very specific needs. They can't be on 3 floors, and this building has 3 floors, and there's a little over 4,000 square feet on each floor. So we have this concept in architecture called a test fit. Can we fit it in here? So this is the very first exercise we do. We have 4,000 square feet on the lower level, 4,000 square feet on the ground level. So how much more square feet do we need? We need 8,200 additional square feet on that same level to suit the needs of WISO. So that configuration with the square doesn't make any sense because it would cover up one of the facades. One of the goals is to preserve the look of the existing building. So it makes sense to put the addition on one side or the other. So looking at the satellite map, you can see kind of where the yellow is there. It's a little hard to see in this, but you can see that the logical side is, as we look at this plan on the left, because that is adjacent to the empty parcel, which is also owned by Iron Table Holdings. So you can see there's only a small portion of the yellow that abuts up to any neighbor. So what I've done is I've positioned the addition to be least adjacent to any neighbor. Denise mentioned that there's no construction, no new buildings allowed in front of the facade, so all the construction is behind the red line there. That area in red will be preserved as lawn, much like it is today. Okay, so this is what led us to the layout. So knowing what the massing is, where the addition wants to be, we worked in detail with Luke and his staff, his engineers, heads of the various departments to identify their needs and mass out the building and provide a circulation plan. So this is the plan we ended up with. I want to point out that these areas in green are for public access. So these are areas that you will all be able to walk right into and walk in the front door and be a part of community events there. The upper level, there's sort of a greeting area, lounge. On the lower level, it's an open area where they might have fun drives and gatherings, things like that. The community voices is a very popular a feature of WISO. And so this area in orange is the community voices. A very large portion of the footprint is dedicated. This is also community access, something that we could all be a part of. Additionally, in the addition is really where the magic happens. That's where the studios are, the high-tech stuff. Wanted to put that in the addition so that we could really control the construction, control the sound, have access below and above, and make it to exactly what the specs are. But in the center of that, we have a very, very small gathering space that would hold, Luke, I forget what we said, is it 80 folks or so?
About 80 chairs.
Yeah. So that is also a public space, but you would need to be invited into that because by FCC rules, that's a secured area. So that is by special event only. Then the other areas, there's a little bookshop that'll be there. People can go there to purchase recordings of things that were made there or swag, other types of things. Little bookshop in front. Pink area, that's a very special part of the building where the air studios are, where the engineering is, and that has the low roof that you'll see in the renderings that is isolated from the neighbor by a solid wall. The newsroom, editing suites, etc. So that's how we arrived at the floor plan. So how do we make how do we adapt the schoolhouse to fit this plan? You see the walls in blue here are structural walls. They're 18-inch thick brick walls. They're beautiful. But it's not very conducive to the layout of a radio station. So what I'm proposing is to remove the walls in red. What that does is it opens up the center of the space, allows us to create wide open spaces. So the idea is to remove those walls, and I want to now here the presentation is going to get a little more interesting. So these are some high-level views, zooming in here, and now I go from these actual photographs to my computer model. And what's great about the computer model is I can show you things that you can't really see on a physical model or in real photographs. So I'm going to cut away the face of the building, and you can see the walls, the structural walls that I mentioned. The walls in red there that just came up in red, those are the walls I'd like to remove. And so to illustrate what that does to the inside of the building, taking out the walls, the floors are removed here just so that I could show you what I'm doing. The floors won't really be removed. But what we do in replace of those walls is we put in a steel structure that does the same job. holding up the roof and creating rigidity in the building. So putting the floors back, you can see sort of the essence of what the inside of the building is going to feel like. There is an atrium in the middle that goes from the skylight all the way down to the basement, bringing natural light down into the basement, making the basement a much more usable space. Also, we will restore the window wells, increase the size of those windows, and create a light-filled lower level. Okay, so we do this so that we can create wide open interior spaces. This just gives us the flexibility that we need. This is what it would look like from the front door, looking in from the front door to the back. And I want to show you, the importance of what I'm proposing here is all about natural light. Like I said, the light that comes in from those buildings is amazing. What I wanted to do was share that light with the entire building, not just sort of corners where that happens. So removing the walls lets me do that, and I'm going to turn the sun off for a second and let you see how the sun moves through the space in the course of a day, which would be today. This would be July 13th is how the sun would move through this space. So you can imagine the difference that having those walls removed makes. Ordinarily, I know the Planning Commission isn't concerned with interior spaces, but this building is so important to this community. I wanted to share with you what the thoughts are and how we're changing the structure of the building. So now to the renderings. You can tell the character of the addition is very different. That's quite intentional. When we talk about conserving old buildings and doing additions to them, a cardinal sin is trying to match the old building. It really is a disservice to the original building and the era that we're doing the new work in. The building is beautiful because it was done with the best technology and the best vocabulary of its era. And when we do something new, we want to do the same thing and respect the existing building. When I say respect the existing building, it means preserving all the corners, all four corners, so you could really see the definition of the building, where it originally started and stopped. On the back, you can see how the addition comes towards us. You can see the large stair tower that's there. It's a limestone covered tower. I'd love to use some locally sourced limestone to clad that tower. And the monuments where the signs are would also be the same limestone. This is a view of balcony on the top, and you can see what I'm talking about when I say distinguish between the old and the new here. From the inside of the building, you will be able to still see that fourth wall. So we want to touch very lightly up against that existing building. Okay, and I'm going to finish. I think that was my last round. I'm going to just finish with some videos. Oh, Josue, I noticed you dimmed the lights earlier. Would you mind dimming the lights?
They'll go off, not so much.
There we go. That's fine. That's fine. Okay, so here's some fly-throughs for you. This is what this building would look like at 8:15. I missed my mark by 15 minutes. But this is what the light was doing 15 minutes ago on this site. We can plug in the longitude and latitude and what north is, plug in the day, and my program will know exactly where the sun is. You can see the green roofs. That's where we'll have the satellite dishes, and there's the radio antenna that could be secured to the building. View along the back side. You can see we're adding more than enough parking, bicycle parking as well, accessibility features. Here are people ending their workday. There'll be a separate entrance for the third floor, which will be office space, completely separate from the radio station. And this is what this illustrates the idea of the open space and how the light can travel through the entire building. And then I'm finishing with, again, this is today, this is what our sunset, time lapse of what the sunset would look like as the lights come up on the building, and this is the sort of night view of the building. So that's the video I have for you. I would like to end on a personal note. And like I said, I grew up in Yellow Springs. WISO is very near and dear to me. I was not a great reader growing up. I was in Mrs. Richardson's class. I don't know if you guys remember Mrs. Richardson. But she worked with us kids who had a tough time reading. And my dear friend, who I got a text from not too long ago, said he's watching on the YouTube channel. He and I did a radio show at WISO as part of that. You see, I had a different hair get up back then. But that's circa 1978 or something. And as part of our learning how to read good, we did this at WISO. Did this broadcasted reading of War of the Worlds. So I'm going to end on that note. And so thank you very much, and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any members of the Planning Commission have any questions for Max?
Yeah. First off, this is not a small feat, and what a great gift for WISO and for the community. I guess the first question is the trees. Are we maintaining all the trees or replacing?
Let me show you again the satellite image, if you don't mind. You can zoom in a little bit better from here. Sorry, bear with me for a second. Okay, there we are. So, oops. So if you remember, the addition starts right about here at the face of the building. All the trees in the front here will be preserved. The trees in this area where we're adding the building will need to be removed. We're happy to replace them in kind with small trees, but they would need to be removed to accommodate the building. But we will make every effort to salvage the trees that we can, so we will need to remove some trees. I also would like to mention, it came to my attention recently that there are a population of chimney swifts that live on this property. And I also just want to mention that we feel very confident that we could save the building and save the birds too, or not displace the birds anyway. There's conservation steps that we're more than happy to take.
Thank you.
And the upper floor and the basement level?
Yeah.
Can you say what the plans are for those?
Yeah, the basement level will be WISO.
Okay.
So that is part of the plan. That's where the pledge drives might happen. There are various fundraising offices around there. The archives are down there. Server room will be down there. But that will be part of WISO space. And it's also part of the atrium. When you walk in the front door, there will be a set of open stairs that lead straight down into the basement. So that's part of the sort of public access. The upper level will be office space for Iron Table.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to comment first that I think it's wonderful what you're doing with the building, and I love the addition. And I particularly love that you have more parking spaces than you need to have. I want to say that. That's wonderful. But I did want to ask, and this is probably dumpsters, the HVAC, those things, are they going to be shielded and sound?
Absolutely. I'm going to go back to my presentation here a little bit. So let's go to. Go back to the presentation here. I don't know if I can speed this video up. I don't want to make you watch the whole thing again. Well, I can say yes. I'll just go forward a little bit here so I can illustrate my point. So you see the big limestone stair tower, and as it goes forward here, you'll see where the roof drops. So, and right there, see where the satellite dishes are? They're kind of shielded by the limestone wall facing the neighbor. Right behind the satellite dishes, that's where the HVAC are. So those two walls, so I'll continue just a little bit. So you see sandwiched between those two tall walls, that's where that stuff will live. That's what we refer to as a mechanical well.
Okay.
And there's an enclosure in the back for the dumpster.
Yeah, there'll be a trash enclosure. Sort of, the thing interesting about this site is there really isn't quite a back side to it, because the side that we're protecting is just, a solid wall. So, it's a challenge to put those things in kind of delicate places. That's why the radio tower is also sandwiched between those two walls to kind of create a protected area for those types of features. The trash enclosure will be on the other smaller parcel.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. It's an ambitious project, and I really love how you're able to integrate the new and the old in a respectful way.
Thank you.
And you and I've talked. I'm probably someone who'd be in the category of it's a tear down. But thank you for respecting the historicity and for the landowner wanting to put that kind of money into fixing this building up, because I know it's going to be quite a project. The only comment I have is that I think the thing that nobody's mentioned, that if I were living in the neighborhood, probably be my biggest concern would be the tower, because it's pretty big, right?
It is big.
Yeah.
It's tall. I would encourage anyone with concerns about that to go to the existing facility. How many of you know where it is? Okay, great. So it's very subtle. So it's difficult to see. It's sandwiched between these buildings, and so that if it were to topple, it would topple towards Union Street. However, the engineering solutions that are available to us, I'm quite confident that we can engineer a tower that can withstand what it needs to. Now, there are certain weather events around here that no engineering can compensate for. So, I don't want to pretend that there's no risk at all. But I think we could take every measure to mitigate the risk.
Well, that and just the visual kind of its presence. But let me say this: I feel like I'm a neighbor to WISO where I live now, and I pretty much don't even notice it.
That was my point.
It's kind. I mean, for those of you who will be living next to it, I don't know. You just don't even see it.
Don't see it.
But I do have this is just an idea. I know co-location is a popular idea with towers, and we have a tower right over here that's not being used.
Yeah.
And with fiber optic being what it is, I think we have it going on Dayton Street. I mean, maybe there's an idea there that...
If that's an option, I would need to defer to WISO's engineers to establish whether that was a viable option for them. However, Luke and I have discussed it in some small detail and agree that it needs more exploration. But that's where we are with it right now. I think this is the worst case scenario that we would need to put it on site. And if there's a good opportunity to use an existing tower and it's not technically infeasible for some reason or really inconvenient for WISO, then I think we would certainly consider that.
Thank you for excellent presentation.
Thank you. You're welcome.
With the retail store that's going to open, aren't you going to need additional signage?
Well, the signage will be a separate approval. Right now, you can see I'm showing a small sign there. You know, I haven't thought all the way through that. So we'll certainly need to develop the kind of look and feel of that space, and with it, its appropriate signage.
Okay, but you would imagine it would be on the building and not something we should address with the additional structure, because I know that was an issue with the deed restriction. So it'd probably be something adjacent on the building. And so
Yes,
you weren't-
no, and the only thing I put on the building was the address numbers, which I think we kind of need to do for the fire department requirements. But that, I don't think that's really considered signage. So we would keep all signs off of the original building, and I don't feel that there's a need to put any signs on the original building. I think the monument sign will serve that purpose. And then if there needs to be a sign for the bookshop, it will be on the addition.
Any other questions, concerns? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. So anybody who would like to comment on this application, again, please step up to the microphone, state your name, and try to keep your comments to 2 minutes or less, please. So. Yep.
I'm Jim Weiner. I live at 347 Union, and I also work for Channel 16. I'm not an engineer, but I can tell you that most radio and TV towers are built on high places, in high places, but away from, human habitation. So I'm not really sure, there's probably some tinfoil folks out there who, talk about radiation and whatnot, and I don't think that's an issue. I think in this case, that the issue is having a tower like that so close to residences.
Yeah, toppling.
Toppling, yes. And certainly the odds of that happening are, kind of minimal. But, that is there. And, that would, at 150 feet, that would be able, where it's located, if it was falling west, would take out about 3 houses right there. So it's just unusual to me. I've never really seen, a radio or TV tower like right in the middle of, a residential area or in town. It's always out, in some place where there's, a considerable amount of space. The design is wonderful. It's just the tower being there. And I think it's probably a good use of the walls for the microwave dishes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Yep.
My name's Joe Cook. I live at 306 Dayton, 2 doors down from this. There is an existing antenna tower attached to that building that goes way above the rooftop. It has probably high frequency or medium frequency vertical antenna on it that's top of that. So it's way more in danger of falling than anything they would build now. As far as radiation from the tower, you probably get more radiation from your laptop pinging your Wi-Fi than you would get from that. That dissipates as an inverse square of the distance from it. So we all remember inverse square laws from physics. But I think that's, they don't build those towers, you don't find them that fall. So I don't think that's a huge danger. But it might reach our house, but it probably wouldn't. But nonetheless, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Leslie Lippert, and I live at 306 Dayton Street also. And I've lived there for over 26 years. And this property has been an eyesore and a nuisance for about 26 years. And I'm just delighted to see this rendering of what's planned. I think it's going to just make everything in the neighborhood look better. And I've worried about this building for years, that somebody was going to tear it down. And I love old buildings, and this old building is going to be beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm Marion Stewart. I live at 352 Dayton Street, and I am thrilled. This is awesome. I'm just a few doors down. I also appreciate that they're actually providing space for public radio and making it affordable for them to be in existence. So thank you.
I'm David Diamond. I live at 412 Dayton Street. We've always walked by that building and thought, well, what if it, like had something to do with the arts? That would be really neat, because we're both musicians, and having it be where WISO is just an incredible addition to our neighborhood. And I think we'd be very excited about it, and they'd probably have to stop us from going in there and playing duets on the radio or something.
Hello, my name is Megan Bachman. I live at 330 Dayton Street, and just want to echo just how thrilled I am for WISO to get this brand new facility, for this building to be preserved, which is definitely has not been certain. So I love the project. I do want to also ask Planning Commission to just acknowledge that this is a very residential neighborhood, and that there's some features of this proposal to consider. This is a 24/7 business. This is, it's been a commercial building, but this is the addition of retail. We're talking about performance space. We're talking about, the tower. So I would just encourage Planning Commission to just really consider in the context of that residential area. I think for me, the only concern that I, really have, and we're really affected by that kind of western facade, by that very short setback from the property. And really it's the kind of the visual impact of a 41-foot concrete or limestone tower along with the satellite dishes. I know you mentioned the trees. That would love if Planning Commission could get more clarity about the specifics of keeping that tree line on the western edge, if it's possible with 5 feet, if not, for that setback to be looked at, because I think that visual screening is going to be really important, because it's just right up against it. And again, I know that's a variance, but it should be 10 feet technically. And then lighting is another thing just to be aware of. I didn't see that in any of the information provided, just how much I know, as a 24/7 operation, how bright. There also was a mention of a generator, and I didn't know if that was an emergency generator, any more details about the noise from that. So once again, very thrilled with it and looking forward to seeing all the details as they get ironed out. Thank you.
Yep.
I'm Ellen Hoover, 204 Dayton Street. Really, really thrilled about this. Max, I remember you when you had hair. So glad you're back, glad you're doing this. Your design is beautiful, what we're seeing of it. And I'm really happy that this particular project does have the parking. That's, we on Dayton Street, all of us, I think, can attest that on the Friday through Sunday, it's almost a nightmare. You can't park. I have had to park 2 to 3 blocks away multiple times, because if you leave, if you feel you have to go shopping or something with your car, you will not get to park in front of your home or even near it. We used to be able to park on Walnut Street, but that isn't occurring now because of the growth of millworks and so forth. So, and I don't anticipate that coming back. So I do appreciate the parking that they're supplying and the sensitivity to the historic nature, not only of the building, but of the rest of us who own the historic homes. These are some of the oldest homes in Yellow Springs. Thank you.
I'm Lisa Abel. I live at 114 North Winter Street. I live in one of the other oldest buildings in town. I talked to Luke a little bit about just future concerns, and I just wanted to raise those to you as well. One is the traffic on Union Street. So There's already an apartment building on Union Street that generates quite a bit of traffic for a little street. And of course, people coming and going to work will add to that. So it's more of a consideration. There are already people that live in the neighborhood that drive too fast. So what I asked Luke is, once he has employees there, please remind them, even if they're late to work, to slow down when they come around the corner. Because there's a lot of people walking the dogs or biking or whatnot. And then the other concern that I forgot to mention to Luke was, I think what Megan mentioned, which is the lighting at night. Our house has 3 street lights. It's great if I want to read a book without the lights on inside the house. So just, in terms of lighting for the parking lot, to be mindful of that. But otherwise, I'm thrilled. Max, you're a brilliant designer. Your concepts are awesome. And thank you, and thank your team for doing this. I'm excited. As others have said, that building has just been, gosh, I wish someone would do something with it for years. So this is great. It's great to keep WISO in town. I think that's a real asset for the village as well. So, thanks.
I'm the Chimney Swift guy. I brought some.
And your name is?
For everybody. My name is Riley Dixon.
Okay.
I live at 322 Union Street next to the apartments in the weird chicken coop house. I'm on the Environmental Commission also. I guess to start with, I really support the project. I love WISO. Big Excursions fan. I love the idea, right? Like everybody else, I walk past the building every day and wonder, like, what's going to happen to it. One of the cool things about living where I do is I get to watch from the end of July pretty much to the end of October this glorious chimney swift occupation of the building. Like every night at dusk, thousands of these guys are swooping and swarming and diving in and out of the chimney. It's magical to watch. Chimney swifts are pretty close to being endangered. 70% of their population has gone down in the past 50 years. 99% of chimney swifts breed in the US, so it's not like we can kick it elsewhere. It's on us. It's on Yellow Springs to preserve the chimney swifts. I know there are a number of spots in town where they live. The chimney by the brewery, the elementary school, Mills Lawn, the Antioch Power Plant, and that might come down sometime in the near future, and the schoolhouse. And that chimney might come down also, which would further displace this increasingly endangered population. So I'm calling to keep the chimney if possible. I know you can add a cap on it that would meet insurance requirements and also allow the swifts to come in. They don't damage any structural feature that they're occupying. That's the cost-effective option. The least cost-effective option would be to create an artificial tower. That's been done over and over, and it's been done more and more as the populations kind of decline and Audubon societies take up the mantle to do it, to preserve these populations. But that gets dicey, right? Like the artificial chimneys. Sorry, the artificial chimneys have to be away from power lines and 25 feet away from other structures, and they have to be a certain height. So, in the interest of continuing the project and preserving the swifts at the same time, I would advocate for the retention of the existing chimney. And I know that butts against your really cool skylight. So. Maybe there's a middle ground. I'd love to talk to you more about chimney swifts.
Can I respond briefly?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm confident that we can come up with a solution to preserve the birds. Everybody involved in this project, particularly Dave, is interested in doing this the right way, doing it in an environmentally sensitive way. One of the mandates that I got from Dave very early on was, we're going to use local talent as much as possible, and we're going to do it in an environmental way as much as possible. And so I think there are a number of solutions to this which we will study further. I only really became aware of this a couple of days ago, so I'm sad to report I haven't studied it. But we will study it, and I think there are a lot of potential great solutions, and I'm happy to talk further and come up with solutions. I'm not prepared to present one tonight, but I will commit that we will study the issue.
Thank you.
May I add just two quick things?
Sure, please.
Thank you. Yeah.
Speak into the microphone,
Yes, I will. So Luke Dennis.
Everybody out there in Zoom land can hear you.
Yeah, there are lots of them. I keep getting texts. I just wanted to point out that, so our existing tower is 148 feet tall. It is in a residential neighborhood. There are many houses right behind it. They're constructed to withstand gale force winds. And as Laura pointed out, I do think it's not particularly glaring or obvious. So as much as possible, this 150-foot tower will be tastefully done and very, carefully secured. So we feel, our engineer feels confident about the safety of it. And then I just wanted to point out that we are on the air 24 hours a day, but from 8 to 11 p.m. most nights, there's one music host parking one car in the parking lot, and then from about 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. the next morning, we're on automation. So don't picture, a party all night, people in the parking lot or lots of people in our building. We really are shut down from about 11 p.m. until the following morning. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, public? Yeah.
My name is Gabby Loomis Amrine, and Riley and I have had the pleasure of watching the Swifts together for several years, and I just wanted to frame lastly that I don't think we have to look at this as something that is just a little bit of a burden in terms of working with the Swifts. I think it could be potentially a nationally unique opportunity to have a radio station that Swifts come to, and we're actually recording this population here, right? That could be a really, really interesting project that actually might have some funding dollars behind it. So I think working with the right resources could prove really beneficial, actually, for this. So.
Thank you. Anybody else want to participate in the public comment?
I'd like to say one last thing to close it out.
Okay.
There's been a lot of gratitude expressed tonight, and I want to express my gratitude to Dave Chappelle. He could have chosen any architect, really anywhere, to do this project, but he chose to pick a Yellow Springs guy. And I'm very grateful for that, and I think that shows you the intent behind what's happening here in town about preserving what's good about this place, about renewing the things that need to be renewed. And really, that's what this project's about. It's about preserving WISO. It's about preserving this beautiful building. And so I want to thank Dave for his instigation of this project, and where it's coming from is from the very most honorable place.
Thank you. All right, there's no more public comments. I'm going to go one last chance. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and bring the conversation back to Planning Commission. Everybody's questions get answered. Are there any ongoing concerns or questions?
Directional parking lights using more yellow lights rather than bright lights, and then additional screening for neighbors who are concerned, or working with the architect to make sure that there's options for screening for light, regular security lights at night.
So I have a question about that. We have that as a staff recommendation to be brought back to staff for staff review and final approval. So I guess if there's something over and above that that you want to put into a motion, that should be added to.
Okay.
I make a motion to approve the conditional use and site plan for this project on the following conditions: that there be obtained from the BZA a variance for the building height and radio tower setback, that a replat lot combination and rezoning of the lot occur, that there's an exterior lighting plan approved by staff, which includes 90-degree cutoff lighting, minimal lighting in the evening, lighting that is less intrusive into the neighborhood and the neighbors, that there be consideration on site of screening with vegetation as appropriate for screening from neighbors, for the neighbors, that there be a stormwater mitigation plan, surface drainage plan, building plan showing exterior mechanical equipment and screening, which we've already seen, and that the parking area landscaping plan also be approved by staff.
I second that.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Did you get all that down?
Oh, heck yeah.
Oh, great. She's a pro.
You can ask me to take it back, or just check it.
Well, do we need it read back? Everybody got it? Everybody got it?
We're good.
Okay. If there's any discussion of the motion, all right, go ahead and please call the roll.
Yes. Green.
Yes.
Stiles.
Yes.
Amen.
Yes.
Curlis.
Yes.
Doden.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody who participated in the discussion. Now we get to the good stuff. Old business. We didn't have any old business.
No business.
New business.
Maybe wait.
No, we'll wait till the hubbub is done. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Need to sign this. No, I don't. Which one of you did the purchase? No, I don't. No.
Me.
Oh, she didn't. Okay, were you going to do that? She was going to do that.
Yeah.
Laura's got hers on the other four.
Wait, that's ordering for what?
The APA ethics training.
What's more NPR than saving the bird?
The American Planning Association.
I know, but I just now got it. They're going to need a second session. People don't need to submit.
Okay, if you're having conversations, could you, because we still got business to do. Okay, anything on new business?
I know, it's amazing. They
I was wondering if they could the solicitor look into the definition of social impact and find a mechanism to quantify economic impact for conditional uses.
That would be up to council to define.
Well, yeah, well, make a request that we firm that up so there's no ambiguity in the code. And then also ask, again, if they look at assessing annual fees to any businesses that are using the public parking to meet the parking requirements in order to fund additional parking as well as maintaining current parking, so it does not get assessed back to the private residents' taxpayers.
Are you supporting what Denise said she's bringing for 2022?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Okay. Then the other thing, Gary was talking to me earlier, and then he mentioned during public comments the possibility of formalizing some language in the code for bike parking requirements, which, as we have, just as something to talk about in the future.
I mean, if you want to have some definitions of bike standards for bike parking, but as far as bike parking, we use it almost every time because we never have enough parking, and that is an alternative in the code.
Right.
Yeah.
To work on that. Work something up for us. Okay. Yeah, he had some good ideas talking about types of bicycle parking racks and things like that make a big difference as well.
Can I talk to Denise a little bit about,
think about
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and, okay, so.
Agenda planning?
Agenda planning. So I'm suggesting that we don't have a meeting in August because the council will not be here, and that's when council takes the first meeting in August off. So I only have one that just came in today, and I talked to him, and he was okay about waiting till September.
Good.
I have a question. Does that happen every year? That August
with
is...
council, yeah, it does.
So that August is...
It doesn't always happen with planning commission if we had a lot ahead of
okay.
time, but I don't.
Okay.
Could I amend what I said to add in, because obviously if residents are going to have, shortages of parking, the parking in the grass in the front yard might become more of a common issue in areas, especially adjacent to the downtown. Obviously, the homeowner has the cost if they break the pipes or anything under the grass in their front yard, but it might be something that we should look into, at least having some way to talk about it.
Yeah, the zoning code update allowed for parking in the front. You know, it has to be approved by the village. This particular one that Mr. Miller was talking about, I think there's a rather large right-of-way, and there's some village utilities there, so there is room for parking, but it would be a little further closer to the house.
Is it having that truck there, I mean, that's like a commercial class truck, is that going to damage village utility lines that are anything underneath it? No? Okay.
I don't, but that's not a planning commission.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really, it's getting into an enforcement issue for stuff.
Yeah.
We just don't have anything that says you can't do it, but we can, look at the driveway standards.
I know in Xenia, we ran into an issue with RV parking in the front yard, and we found a way to address it, but I honestly cannot remember how it was dealt with.
Yeah.
We said it before many a time that it's not a great idea to amend your zoning code to address a single issue.
Oh, yeah, that one.
And again, it's an issue of, it may be time to talk about mediation, it may be time to sit down with your neighbor, but to change the zoning code because there's one person who says, I have a problem with my neighbor. Now, if you all decide to go out and scatter around on Saturday and see, oh my goodness, this is really a problem.
It's widespread, yeah.
Then that becomes a matter for planning commission, I think.
Well, and that's the point, if downtown's going to get more and more busy, and like the people on Cliff Street aren't going to be able to park in front of their houses, is that an alternative for them?
Yeah, that's such a weird thing because I talked with one of the neighbors that was here tonight, and she's already acknowledging people already park there.
Yes.
So it's
they
like
did
that's
say
going to
that.
happen regardless. So I didn't really know how to respond to her. I know. It was like, what do I say?
Well, it sounds like there's got to be some sort of compromise.
I know.
I was discouraged that the tenant, I guess he would be, was not thinking that was a additional, any additional problems that he would be causing. But I really feel for those people, if they're not if it's gonna be more busy on bigger time periods
I think what's going to happen, though, honestly, so many of the businesses downtown close by 6 or 7 o'clock at night that I think that I've driven on I'm here late sometimes, and those parking lots are open. So I think that they'll,
So, and
Well, that's why the parking
maybe on Cliff
study
Street
was-
and places like that where I don't know how well their driveways are marked. We may need some better techniques to paint the curbs or something so that people know
stay
exactly
away
where they can park and where they can't, so they aren't blocking in somebody's driveway.
Johnny, you want to say anything?
Can I address this?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So, you know how narrow Cliff Street is?
Yeah.
It's actually 45 feet road front right away. So all the houses on Cliff, when you step out their door,
You're
3
in the
feet,
right of way.
you're in the right of way. They have, and so what they've done, some of them built ADUs behind their houses, and they've taken up all their parking spots, and now it's become a public problem. So public right-of-way in the front, public right-of-way in the back, and if you widen that street to 45 feet, where are they parking? On the public right-of-way. So to ask a business to give you 3 dedicated spots, we did the same thing with Woodrow and Glen Street, and we needed extra parking on there. They widened it, but we can't designate that because it's on the street, same way they can't designate it for residentials. So I would encourage that you guys look at the county GIS. It's not always correct, but we have road right-of-ways in the village is 75 feet. All the college streets are 75 feet road right-of-way. Dawson Street's another one, all that area. So it goes all the way from Railroad all the way to Winter Street's 45 feet, and you got a 20-foot road. Limestone Street, same way. We actually have Limestone Street goes up to right at a property that has a garage right on the right-of-way.
Well, and Woodrow Street was a good example of that.
Woodrow
I
Street's
went
a
out
great
there
example.
a week or so ago because they were thinking, well, this needs to be wider.
And it
And
is
it's
wider
like, well,
by
if we
7
make it
foot.
wider, we're going to take out your garden and your railing, and we're going to take out your
And they
parking
didn't want
lot.
that because they consider that their front yard when it's actually road right-of-way.
Yeah, they consider it their property now.
So parking, I agree with you. That's the reason why Denise and I worked very hard and Josue worked very hard on putting parking plans in there. We need to get back to the study of the parking spots.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
And it's been a big problem for 50 years. Even though we have many more people here now, at least people perceive it to be a problem. What we might find out from the parking study is a lot of it can be alleviated if people knew where there were places that they could park on street. And then, Johnny, you want to mention cemetery?
Cemetery Street, Lord, you probably know this, Northern Gateway project that didn't actually happen. For about $30,000, I can create 61 spots right there on that end versus trying to put a couple more houses there. We need parking right there more because they're access to downtown.
Well, it's visible too.
It's also visible. We can put sign for public parking.
It's easy to find.
Yeah. And we've been trying.
Signage is going to be key once we get it figured out. Signage is going to be key. It could be something like on the wayfinding signs that, you scan it and then next time you come into town that public parking, like Denise said, North College Street.
Yeah, East North College.
East North College, East South College, there's nothing there.
No.
And there's major parking opportunity right there.
Yeah, people will walk. They know how to walk from Cemetery Street because for
Correct.
years it was street fair parking right there.
Yes.
Is there a way to mark public parking differently, different colors?
Oh, there's signage that's
there is
standardized.
Well, the sign, I know signage is one thing. Signage is, I was driving Senior the other day, and I know the green, when we put the green for the bike paths and people threw a fit, but it is a lot easier if people are like, oh, I need to look for the green parking spaces, and that's public parking. And even though, legally, yes, they could park in front of these people's house, that people are used to, I can park where it's green or whatever, yellow, or yellow's everywhere, but that might just help facilitate the awareness of this is the public parking and help people with or without signs.
Correct. And the bike parking, we have been addressing that ever since I've been here. Actually, right across from the lumber yard by the skate park, we've actually got a concrete pad up there and for bicycle parking. Problem is now I got to take it back to the shop, weld on feet, because the skateboarders decided to carry it down and put it in a skate park, and it's been a constant battle. So this week we're taking it back to the farm. Now we got to anchor it down because they like riding their skateboards on it.
Probably not took the wooden ramps away, but I don't
They
blame
probably
the wooden ramps needed to go, but they were dangerous. But yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you.
I would ask staff to look at I know it's in front of council now, but I'm having a lot of second thoughts about that requirement for commercial insurance for TGL because of something Mitzi Miller said. that she ran a TGL, and her homeowner's policy, you could actually buy a rider. If it's owner, operator, occupied, you can just buy a rider.
So I think it was just for non-owner occupied, because on any HO3 to HO.
But the question,
Yeah. It's any HO3 to HO4 by ISO code includes at least 2 renters, tenants within the building as long as it's owner occupied. It's the ones that are not owner occupied that it voids the coverage.
they have to buy commercial.
They have to buy commercial.
Okay, fair enough.
And I think you're good on that.
All right.
All right, anything else on agenda planning?
Nope. I expect September to be busy, since we won't have a meeting in August, and I'm sure at some point we'll probably have the Ober development coming to us.
Then I will make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.